Welcome to 40 Fit Radio, where we bring you science-based, common sense information regarding fitness, health, and lifestyle for the 40-plus community. I'm your host, Darren Deaton, doctor of physical therapy with 28 years clinical practice experience, starting strength coach, and certified CrossFit trainer. "40 Fit Radio, real people, real fitness, real health." Welcome back to the 40 Fit Radio podcast. I'm your host, Coach D, and today we're going to embark upon a series of podcasts. They're going to be the short series podcast covering what we're going to call looking good, feeling good. So these podcasts are all going to be about not only having a nice lean body with good muscle mass and appropriate body fat levels, but also feeling good, feeling strong, able, and youthful. So I know a lot of masters, aged individuals out there, or people that are either they're crossfitting or they're doing endurance events, or they're weightlifting, or they're maybe doing cardio in a gym, or they've got some other athletic endeavor or fitness endeavor that they're involved with. And by and large, most of those people that I know, now maybe I have a weird group of friends, and some people might, if you're a friend of mine, then you might be that person. But by and large, most of those people want to not only feel good, but they want to look good. So, we know that there are a lot of important things, more important things, I guess you would say, than just looking good. Intellectually, we know that, but I will tell you, after the years of experience owning gyms and also being a doctor of PT, that I have found that people will not consistently exercise for long periods of time or consistently train for long periods of time if they don't see a change in their body, if they don't see the changes that they have the expectation level of. Now, that change might not fit your methodology on what you think that change should be or your concept. It might be that a guy wants to get bigger. He wants to get more mass. He wants to gain a little bit more body fat. It might be that someone wants to be a little smaller, that they want to lose body fat. They want to redistribute or reproportion body mass, lose weight, gain weight, all those kinds of things. But by and large, most people want to plain and simple, look good naked. They want to look good naked. That's the thing that matters. And people always laugh when I say that. When I say, that the number one reason people work out is to look good naked, and I think they think that that's a joke, but I think it's true. So you ask yourself, why do you work out? Why do you do the things you want to do? I think as we age, our body begins to change. We start to see some physical changes in the way we look in the mirror, and also in the way that we're able to do things. Functionally, we see changes, a lack of strength, a lack of mobility, a lack of endurance or stamina. And we start to ask ourselves, how can we impact that? And so, I think along with this process, every individual has to determine what they consider looking good too. And so let's just kind of quantify that a little bit. I think an appropriate healthy body fat for a male is probably somewhere between 15 to 20%. And for a female, probably in the low 20s to the mid to upper range 20s, like 20 to 27%, somewhere in that range. Now, are there individuals that have higher body fat levels than that, and they're very fit and they're very healthy? Yes. And if you like a higher body fat level than the ranges that I've given, then I think that's fine. I mean, that's your own personal preference. But I think in regards to the standards that are out there in the fitness world, those are ranges that are pretty well accepted. And in fact, I think that they're actually a little lower than that if you want to go from like someone who just has a good body fat level to a fitness body fat level to an athletic level. The ranges keep lowering even more and more, especially in the males, than it is for just a general healthy body. But people exercise for many different reasons. I think in our masters population, we probably primarily exercise, like we talked about, for health reasons. Looking good naked is one of those things. For aesthetics, and these are not necessarily in order. For fitness, for a sport or recreation of some type. And then I think we also use it for quality of life, for stress relief, for an outlet. There are many different reasons why people exercise. But I think I've found a method that really works well in keeping people looking good and feeling good. And that's what we're going to go over in the course of the next several podcasts. We're going to have just kind of a series of 20 to 30 minute podcasts on these different topical areas. And so for you to get the full effect of it, you really need to listen to Looking, Feeling Good 1, which is today, part 1, which is today. And we're going to talk about several different topics along the way. These are things that I have seen work to get people looking good and feeling good with hundreds of individuals that we've trained over the years, and then also in my physical therapy practice. So these are not gimmick. I'm not going to sell you a gimmick. Well, I'm not going to sell you anything. By the way, this is all free if you didn't figure that out. The podcast is free to listen to. All the content's free. But the real sell here is basically that there isn't a sell, that there isn't a fad, that there isn't a gimmick here, that there's no special program that you need to do. There's a model of living that I think works real well for older master's aged individuals. But if someone starts selling you, if I started selling you, like you see in some of these ads, you see this guy, he's got perfect washboard abs. He's got a perfect Greek god figure, small joint spaces, big muscle bellies, and this is the way you're going to look. Well, that's not necessarily the case unless you have his genetics. Everybody's got a different body type, and that's what I'm selling. Everybody has a different body type. You need to maximize your own body type, and you also see that perfect female, quote unquote. I'll use that term very loosely, perfect female, that the marketers and the mass media want you to focus on, and that model type body, very narrow waist, slender hipped, big bust, washboard abs. If you've got that type of genetics, then great. But a lot of females don't have those genetics, just like a lot of males don't have those male genetics. And so our goal is to get you to maximize your own genetics. And don't buy into some program because they tell you you're going to look like this. If someone tells you you're going to look like this, they're selling you something. And they probably don't have your best interest in mind. And so today we're going to talk about one of the areas that I think we have to cover first to understand how to have that looking good, feeling good body. And that is your metabolism and how your metabolism affects your overall body look and how you feel too. But definitely the more aesthetic part of what your body's going to look like after all that hard work of being in the gym or being in, wherever you're at, whatever type of endeavor you're involved with. And so the metabolism is very important that we talk about it. And then everything from there, we're going to talk about everything from your diet. We're going to talk about metabolism first. We're going to talk about diet next, nutrition next, and how it influences this looking good, feel good body. Then we're going to talk about exercise and your activity level. And then we're going to tie all these things together into a program model that I think works the best to create that looking good, feeling good body. So there are a lot of what I would call hinge pins or hitch pins to this model that are very, very important. And we'll hit those things, hit the highlights, and then drill down into the detail too so we can learn a little bit more about how we can apply these aspects or these things in our life. Metabolism, though, basically is something that's really important. And there's a lot of I guess you would say, there's a lot of lies out there in the industry about in the the diet industry about metabolism, in the fitness industry, in the magazines. There's a lot of information about how to accelerate your metabolism, how to drive your metabolism through the roof. Hey, take this, poke that, or whatever. But do these things, and your metabolism is gonna change drastically. And we're gonna go over that. We're gonna go over some of the true facts about how your metabolism is created and how you can, if you can influence it, how you can influence it. So first of all, let's talk about the things that probably, according to the research, most influence your metabolism. And in the show notes, we'll put some studies that I'm going to use as a frame of reference. And there's going to be some. We'll go ahead and put all the studies in there. They're going to be used for the following episodes. But there's going to be some metabolism studies in there that basically support the information we're talking about today. So, number one, probably the largest factor on controlling or variable that controls your metabolism is your genetics and your body type. I hate to tell you that, but if you are born with genetics, your metabolism level is kind of, I hate to say set, but it is relatively stable as a metabolic rate. So first of all, what is the metabolism? The metabolism is your rate of calorie burn to sustain cellular function in your body, your total body. So it's a metabolic rate, the way that your body uses the energy pathways and it uses foodstuffs or calories in, and how it uses those calories throughout the day. Now, there are different types of metabolism or different descriptions of your metabolism. One is called the basal metabolic rate or the resting metabolic rate, and that is basically the amount of caloric load or calories that you need per day to sustain resting body functions. So that would be just the day in, not doing your activities or anything. This is just resting body function to sustain your body's life on a daily basis. And then what we would call an activity-related metabolic rate, and that is your basal metabolic or your resting metabolic rate plus all the energy that's required to perform your daily task. Now, the bulk, and I do mean the bulk of your metabolism rate, is created or built off of your resting metabolic rate. We can influence that metabolic rate some, but normally not enough to offset a diet rich and dense in calories, more calories in and less calories out kind of concept. So your metabolic rate or your metabolism is the rate at which your entire body burns calories. Now, to drill that down a little deeper, we could actually say this, that the metabolic rate is the individual metabolic rate of each cell in your body, each organelle in your body. So it could be a muscle cell, a fat cell, a bone cell. It could be a liver cell. It could be a kidney cell, a lung cell, heart muscle cell. It could be a brain cell, skin cell, all these different cellular types, organelles that have functions, burn calories at different levels. Now, one thing we're going to talk about in a future episode that's really important to learn is that a muscle cell at rest burns a lot more calories than a fat cell does. And we'll talk about why. I mean, you could obviously see why that's important, but we'll talk about that more in the future and why that's really, really important to be able to create a body that has a good calorie burn and balances that lean mass growth. So, but we could talk about the metabolic rate in that way, that each organ or each cell in your body has to use a certain amount of calories to survive its daily functions. But when we add that all together, that would be a sum total of your metabolism. Okay? Now, we know genetics and body type influence that the most. So your body has been wired in its DNA code to burn calories at a certain resting metabolic rate. When you're younger, that metabolic rate is higher, and as you're going through the growth process and you've got high levels of growth hormone, high levels of insulin growth factor, and all these hormones that drive body growth, your metabolism is very, very high because it's growing cells. It's growing bone cells and muscle cells and tendon cells and ligament cells and brain cells and organ cells and all these different cells. It's growing. And as your body begins to reach its the exit out of adolescence or the growth cycle and you become a mature adult, your metabolism begins to slow down automatically once that body has reached its maximum growth cycle and you stop growing. At some point, there are only certain cells in your body that keep growing, and the other cells pretty much just stay in a maintenance mode, or really, when you think about it, kind of an aging mode. Imagine a tree that grew and then at some point stopped growing but stayed at that level for its entire life, but it had a set finite lifespan. Well, that's what human living is like. Our cells stop growing at some point, and we maintenance the cells that we don't reproduce, and we reproduce the cells that we reproduce, like skin cells. And so at some point, that metabolic rate becomes more of a steady state as you reach an adult. And as you begin to age over time, that metabolic rate begins to drop. Now, researchers have postulated as to why that metabolic rate begins to drop, and there's a lot of theorized reasons for that, but we still really don't know why that is. It's probably due to hormonal function. It's probably due to a drop in lean mass, which would be a lower caloric value, and a drop in normal maintenance of cells. And so there's a whole probably sequelae of events that are occurring that cause that drop in metabolism. But we really don't know why that is. But plain and simple, as we age, our metabolism drops. So as we're trying to keep this looking good, feeling good body, we're fighting against a metabolism that's dropping. So our daily caloric energy need is lowering, but we're still eating the same diet that we're eating and still doing the same things that we're doing. And so we're basically consuming more calories than we're burning, and then we get weight gain and insidious weight gain and all these other things. But so genetics plays a huge role in that. Your DNA, how your body is structured, how your DNA is wired. Second thing out of that DNA is your body type. There are 3 different types of body types. We've talked about this in the previous nutrition episode, and I can't remember which episode that was, but far way back in the Foundation series, the first 10 episodes. And there's 3 types of body types. Ectomorphs, which are generally longer, leaner. I guess you would use the term skinnier, but leaner is a better term, more politically correct. Leaner body types, longer body types, they carry a little less fat mass than the other body types. And generally, these are your runners, your marathoners, your endurance athletes, those individuals. Then you have an endomorph. The endomorph would be your larger individual, much bigger boned. The ectomorphs would be much smaller boned in general. The endomorphs are going to have bigger bone stock. They're going to carry more muscle mass. They're naturally going to have a higher fat level on board. And this might be your power lifter or your lineman on a line. A more full-figured woman might have an endomorphic body type, and that's a great example as to why you can't look at that advertisement of that woman that's got a tiny little frame, tiny little petite frame, and they're selling you that you're going to look like that. Well, you may never look like that, but that doesn't really matter because you're not her. That's important to recognize. You're special anyway, and the goal would be to maximize your own genetics and to make your body look the best that your body can look based on what you want, not what everybody else wants, but what you want. I mean, everybody wants to look good and feel good about themselves. And that's an inside job. We've talked about that in previous episodes too. It's really all about how you feel about yourself. And then the last thing would be, so we've got the ectomorph, the endomorph, then we have the mesomorphs. And the mesomorph is that body type that sits right in the middle between the other two, the leaner individual and the heavier individual. And this is your more athletic build. The individual can kind of ebb and flow between the two body types some. It's kind of a hybrid. It's kind of in between the two. And they generally have a little bit lower body fat than an endo and higher than an ecto. They've got good muscle mass. They've got a medium bone stock and average build, average size. So those are the 3 body types. You can't change that, but that really does drive part of the metabolism picture. The second thing that we know drives metabolism is age and gender. Women generally have a lower metabolic rate or metabolism than males And we think that that's mostly due to hormones and lean mass. So the amount of testosterone, the amount of insulin growth factor, the amount of growth hormone, all these different male hormones that drive muscle mass, but also the muscle mass drives metabolism, and the metabolism drives the muscle mass. I mean, it's kind of a big picture idea there. So, but males generally have a faster metabolic rate than females. We talked about age a little bit, how as we age, that metabolism is going to decline too. So the third thing that's going to affect the metabolism would be your diet, your nutrition, how you eat and what you eat. You know, I think in kind of the coaching community, the strength coaching community, we all talk about this, and we have some registered dietitians on staff that are on staff with the Starting Strength Online Coaching organization that I'm involved with. And then I've also met several nutritionists and registered dietitians within the CrossFit community that have written books. And, you know, I've read everything from the ketogenic diet, the Atkins diet, to the paleo diet, to the primal diet, to the Whole 30, Whole 9, to all these different, the zone, all these different diet types. But we do know that your diet and the types of food that you eat can affect your metabolic rate, because your metabolic rate really can probably be influenced by two primary external factors. And one of those is your diet, because certain foods that you consume require more thermogenesis. They produce more heat and require more energy to burn. But they also can influence your blood chemistry and how your insulin is produced, and how much insulin sensitivity or resistance you have, and how you metabolize or mobilize foodstuffs out of the bloodstream into the fat cell for storage, and vice versa, how you use it, how you mobilize it back out for burn. So your diet can influence not only the types of foods you eat, but more importantly than the types of foods you eat, because yes, that does influence it, but also how much you eat. So the portion size and the total caloric value. I really believe now more than ever that if you do not have a calorie deficit in your diet, that you're not going to lose weight. And losing weight is as simple. The hard thing about losing weight and losing body fat and making sure that it's not lean mass loss is, number one, having a diet that's, and we'll talk about this in much more detail, very high in protein, moderate and good quality carbs, good non-processed sugar carbs, and then lastly, good quality fats. And so, I mean, there's a lot of detail in there. Obviously, that's very simplistic, but that is probably the key in your diet is that you got to have a calorie deficit to lose weight. So that means you've got to be burning more calories than you're consuming, and we'll talk about how activity level and everything influences that. And that brings us to the last thing. Exercise and how it influences your body's development, exercise and training, and how it influences, and the different types of exercise that you can do, along with how it influences your mass and the distribution of muscle and fat in your body, can also influence your metabolism. It's important to recognize, though, that there are a lot of factors here, but probably the factors that drive it the most are your metabolic rate. It's going to be your genetics and your age and gender. More than anything else, your genetics and your age and gender are going to influence your metabolic rate. Now, researchers believe more than ever that it's fairly clear that there you can raise and lower your metabolic rate slightly, but it stays at a fairly steady state based on your genetic DNA. Now, as you age, that's going to continue to be a downward trend in how many calories you need. And that's also why individuals, as they age, along with many other things, their exercise level, their activity level, that they just become less hungry because their body knows it needs less calories to function. So metabolism can vary a lot between individuals. So we really don't understand why that is, other than we talked about these genetic components and all these four factors that we talked about. But even if two individuals were doing the exact same thing activity level wise, had a similar body size and a similar body type, they might have two separate metabolic rates or two separate metabolisms. So it's not futile, though. The important thing to realize here is that you can influence your metabolism slightly. But if you're out there and you're buying supplements and fat burners and, all these different things that are supposed to, even caffeine and stimulants and these different things, green tea extracts, and that are supposed to drastically influence your metabolic rate, the research that's been done on those things says that it doesn't. That's probably just wasted money. And I'm a stronger believer in creating a calorie deficit diet if that's really what you're about. If you're about losing fat mass, creating a caloric deficit in your diet, and then we'll talk about the other things that you can do. There's a lot of other things that we want to do to look good and feel good. And so we'll talk about those in future episodes. So it's kind of tempting when you think about it to blame weight gain in your metabolism on all these factors. Because metabolism is a natural process and your body has many mechanisms that it uses to regulate it to meet your own needs. And really, the other thing to know here is that only in very rare cases is your metabolism affected, or is there excessive weight gain due to medical problems or conditions. A lot of times I think we want to blame things on things. We want to blame something else when we have the control in our hands and within our power to make the change that we need to make to lose the body fat, gain the muscle mass, or do whatever we're wanting to do in regards to impacting our health and fitness. And there are some conditions that do affect metabolic rate and weight gain. There's conditions like Cushing's syndrome or hypothyroidism, and these are conditions that really do affect the metabolic rate. If your thyroid is way out of whack and your thyroid is not producing enough thyroid hormone, then your metabolic rate is significantly influenced, and that can cause weight gain. Hormones, an imbalance in hormones in general can cause an increase in weight gain. And like we talked about, like things like Cushing's syndrome and stuff like that. So all of these factors overall, when we talk about metabolic rate and metabolism, they result in an imbalance in the energy equation. And you gain weight when you eat more calories than you burn, basically, or you burn fewer calories than you eat. You can look at it one way or another, however you want to look at that. It's the same equation. Some people, guess what? Here's the unfair thing. Some people are going to be able to lose more weight more quickly and easier than others. Just get over it. That's going to happen, okay? You know that guy or that lady. My wife does always complain about me that if I want to lose weight, I just do a little bit of intermittent fasting. I stay away from the junk. I train a little harder, and all of a sudden, I get a six-pack, right? So don't hate me for that. That's partly my genetics. Now, I will tell you this, that as I've aged into my 50s now, it is harder now to lose that little bit around the waist, if I want to lose that, than it used to be when I was in my early 40s, when I first really started getting after it and trying to lean up and gain lean mass and lose body fat. It is harder now than it was back then, and it's going to continue to get harder. But for each individual, that ability to lose weight, gain weight is different based on their own genetics and the factors that we talked about. To lose weight, plain and simple, you need to create an energy deficit. So you're really not going to affect your metabolic rate that much. And if you can affect it, we're going to talk about the things in the next episodes that do affect the metabolic rate and help to accelerate it so that you can burn more calories and have a body that's a calorie burning machine, basically. But here's the key. One thing you need to remember, you're not going to be able to work it off if you have a bad diet or if you're inactive or if you've got a genetic tendency to be heavier. You're not going to be able to work that off, okay? And to be honest with you, there's nothing that shows that having more body fat than less in reasonable levels makes you any healthier. In fact, individuals that have a higher body mass and specifically more lean mass as they age have a better quality of life, a higher functional level, and seem to live longer. And so, the goal is that, if we want to influence your metabolic rate, then we got to look at doing some of these things that we're going to talk about in these next episodes. Because here's our goal. We want to look good and feel good. So in the next episode, we're going to talk about your diet. We're going to talk about your nutrition and how that can influence metabolism. So join us for the next 40 Fit Radio podcast here. And if you want to find us on the Instagrams, you can look us up at 40 Fit Radio. My personal Instagram is @DLDeaton. We have a Facebook page, and it's 40 Fit Masters Community Group. It's actually a group, 40 Fit Masters Community Group. You can go on there and ask questions or find out more information about the podcast. And then you can go to 40fit.com and you can download episodes off of 40fit.com. They're all listed there in chronological order with the most recent episode at the top and all the episodes to follow. So thanks for joining us on 40 Fit Radio, and have a great day.